Hello and welcome to Irish Science Fiction. My name is Brian Sexton and this is going to be chapter 37 of Nancy Goodaim, the Space Ranger. So, a hen, it's a daw, it's a tree, and away we go. Mind your head, advised Bip. He had just stepped into the entrance of a cave that took the form of a crack in a mound close to where European Space Agency mission commander Catherine Bishop had stepped away from the crashed Jupiterian vehicle. Bip had been advising himself. Neither Catherine nor any of the dozen or so noobs following behind him were tall enough for the advice to be warranted. Bip bowed his head as he stepped into the darkness beyond the cave entrance. The mound was covered in heavy growth and located beneath thick forestry, and the cave almost invisible from a distance. It was not somewhere that suggested there was a canteen serving supper inside. "Mind the step," continued Bip. "Sorry, steps," he added. "There's about 148 of them, I think." Catherine followed Bip into the darkness. Her feet carefully found the first step. She reached out her hand to steady herself. The rock wall of the cave was cold to the touch. "Relax," said Bip. "You won't fall. The only way you'll fall is if I counted too few steps. But when I say 148 steps, I mean 148 minimum. So if you just keep stepping like it's steps, you're on the ground and you will find it eventually." The group stepped in silence for several minutes. Bip led the way, followed by Catherine, followed by a silent, ragged procession of axe-carrying noobs. Some faint torchlight lit the steps below. "What's your favourite torture method?" asked Bip. "Are you talking to me?" asked Catherine. "Yes, the noobs have no imagination. I'm looking for new ideas so we could use them on the Sosniaks." Catherine could now make out Bip's orange boiler suit. His head was bent low to avoid the roughly cut stone ceiling. Torchlight in the distance marked the end of the steps. "Where are we going?" "We're on our way to Canteen RB87. That's where the other two extraterrestrials are. Martina manages it, and it has some of the best Flungolian mush I've ever tasted. If you let me know of a painful way to kill someone, I'll put in a good word for you with the sheriff. You never know, he might even give you a job." Bip stepped from the rough-cut stone stairwell and into a large, straight, wide earth corridor. It was lit by flaming torches that were set into hard-packed clay walls, which stretched to the distance in both directions. There was a faint smell of food in the air. "Hey, looks like we're just in time for supper," noted Bip. "Though the way Martina has the place running, there's always something on the go. How come you don't have a crossbow, Catherine? Did you just kill with your hands? Or your feet?" Catherine followed as Bip took a right turn onto the large, straight, wide brown earth corridor. Shadows of torchlight flickered as the noobs followed behind. "A crossbow? Kill what?" asked Catherine. "Sosniaks! Sosniaks in general, and Sosman Borkstapel in particular." I've no idea what you're talking about," said Catherine. "The food smells good," she added. "It will taste good too, I'm certain of that. Now here we are," said Bip. The "here we are" was a large open gap on the left-hand side of the clay tunnel, and a very large room beyond it. The room was filled with neat rows of tables and about 40 benches, half of which had raggedly dressed noobs sitting and eating from buckets. To the right of everything were 6 humanoids behind a counter, and finally there was a large, fat man standing on one of the tables and a holding court before an audience of about 24 noobs, who were turned and listening to him say, "I am going to turn planet Jupiter into the greatest planet in the solar system, almost as good as Mars, and each one of you will be free from this labyrinth of, what's this you call it?" "Chunticle," shouted one of the thin, raggedly dressed noobs. "Exactly, that word," continued the sheriff, "because verily we will assassinate, butcher, destroy, massacre, garrote, torture and slaughter every last Sosniak, and ye will have free rein to do whatever ye want on the surface. And rest assured, I will rule ye better than any Jupiterian ever could, because my word is the word of the gut, for the gut is going to keep me posted on all the things it wants doing." "Wow," said several of the listening noobs. Bip walked over to the counter with the buckets. The smell of food was almost overwhelming. Catherine, who had forgotten how hungry she was suddenly overcome with the urge to grab and eat the contents of one. "Not bad, huh?" said Bip. "But it'd be polite to sit down and start scoffing at one of the tables. Martina's fussy like that." "Sit down and eat at one of the tables, you!" snapped a stocky, harried-looking woman from behind the counter of buckets. "I went to a lot of effort to make Bontogian supper for you, and the least you could do is follow the rules of the canteen." The stocky woman stepped round the counter and stood directly in front of Catherine. "Wait, are you from Earth?" "Yes." Your friends are looking for you. Nancy was over in Canteen RB18 earlier, but she headed off. She's away to find Mission Specialist Bart McMurrow, I think. Or sure, what else could she be up to? There are lots of things to do on Jupiter, Martina, interrupted Bip. Well, there could be lots of things to do on Jupiter if it wasn't for Sosman Borkstapel and his buddies. Catherine, this is Martina Ruddlesplitch from the planet Mars. She came here to kill Sosman Borkstapel and improve the distribution of food. I left Mars with the sheriff to see if the space rocket worked, and to come here to find 2 kidnapped Martians named Budada and Flint. And I'm going to get round to it, once this place is running smoothly. So who is this one anyway, Bip? I don't know. Like I said, her name is Catherine the Bishop, and she's an astronaut. Though I'm not so sure about that bit. We downed the Sosniak rocket up on the surface, and she didn't even try to get it flying again. I wouldn't mind, but I killed all the Sosniaks and everything. And the only damage was a smashed Alerdon crystal, and a bit of cosmetic scuffing on the outside. Oh well, you'd better tell the sheriff, Bip. Catherine thought about the strange few days she just had. Orbiting another planet while providing backup to the first humans to ever set foot on another planet would have been remarkable. A lifetime achievement. But over the course of 5 days, her life had gotten substantially more remarkable. First, the sister craft of San Laika 2 disappeared while approaching Mars' surface. Then her own craft was engulfed by some sort of high-altitude plasma. Then all the sensor readings on San Laika 2 stopped working. Then she fell asleep and woke up on a strange planet, with 2 colleagues who were acting even stranger. And beer taps and kegs where the flight instrumentation on the module should have been, and a breathable atmosphere. And the inexplicable arrival of Specialist Bart McMurrow from the San Laika 1 lander, and the arrival of a hostile robot, and the disappearance of everyone but the robot, and kidnapping by spacemen, and travelling in an alien rocket, and crashing in an alien rocket, and visiting an underground canteen, and grabbing hold of a bucket of excellent food, and having her skill as an astronaut called into question by an orange boiler-suited axe-wielding humanoid extraterrestrial. Catherine decided, on balance, that the best immediate course of action would be to eat food. She walked over to an empty table, sat down at it, and continued eating. "Ah, Bip!" yelled the fat humanoid on the table. "What news of the expedition?" Bip turned to face the man on the table. This meant he was now facing the end of the canteen furthest from the tunnel entrance. The counter was to his right, Catherine was sitting alone eating at a table to his left, and the man was on top of a table at the furthest end, which was about 20 metres away. Between Bip and the two were several tables filled with about 48 noobs, who had just been joined in eating and listening by the noobs who had returned from the planet's surface with himself and Catherine. All were now facing him, and waiting for him to give the news. "We intercepted and captured an airborne Sosniak patrol, Sheriff." "Great work! Great work! Now, noobs, listen to that. Intercepted and captured an airborne patrol. Can you imagine such a thing happening before I arrived to lead ye all? And only on the first Army of Darkness surface expedition too. Go on, Bip. I butchered as many Sosniaks as I could." "Excellent. Great work. Did you hear that, noobs? Butchered as many Sosniaks as he could. Well, that is the future, butchering Sosniaks. And it will be a fantastic thing. There'll be internal organs splattered all over the surface of Jupiter by the time we're finished. Go on, Bip. How did the noobs fare out?" Well, they battered some of the exterior panels pretty hard, causing some severe scratches and dents to those panels." Good work. We'll need to do a bit better if we were to take control of the entire planet. But it's a start, so well done. Is this them here?" The sheriff pointed to the newly arrived noobs who had sat down with the others with buckets of steaming stew and were waiting patiently for the opportunity to eat them while listening politely to the conversation taking place above their heads. Good stuff. You are an important part of the conquest of Jupiter, because even though I am mighty and brilliant, I could not do the things I am about to do without you facilitating me by doing as you are told. So well done. You should be proud. Was there anything else, Bip? No, not really. The rocket the Sosniaks were using was damaged in the interception. Irreparably damaged, unfortunately. And according to experts, it will not fly again. What experts? Oh, sorry, Sheriff. I meant to say expert. A prisoner on the Sosniak ship. An Earther. I thought it was Nancy for a minute, but it's some other one who doesn't have a crossbow, but is an expert on rocket ships. Where is this expert? Up the front here eating Bontoglian stew. See there, to my left, at the bench, scoffing away. Eating while I am speaking? Disgusting. I am the sheriff who speaks with the gut. It is unmotocious to eat while I am speaking, or listening. Stop your eating at once, Earther. The Earther's name is Mission Commander Catherine Bishop, Sheriff. There's some other words in there too, but I'm not really a big fan of their methods of using lots of names. Even 2 was too much for me. That's why I'm happy for everyone to call me Bip. Nobody cares what you are happy with, and I'll call you what I want. Bip. Now, tell that creature to stop eating while I am doing things. An expert, you say? Bip quickly walked over to Catherine and tapped her on the shoulder. The sheriff over there wants to speak to you. He's the tubby lad stood on top of the table, he said. Catherine stopped eating and stood up to face the back of the room. Bip here tells me you're an expert, and that you were a commander. Yes, said Catherine. She looked around to see all the eyes in the room watching her. They then turned back to the sheriff. Well, know that there is only one commander in the Army of Darkness, and that is me. And don't think I'm going to give you a crossbow. This one is mine. The sheriff lifted his holster crossbow to the room. Okay, I won't. Good. And tell me, Mission Catherine Bishop, what kind of an expert are you that you cannot get a simple rocket ship to fly? I'm used to human technology, and the ESA Mars mission San Laika series in particular. The technology is alien to me. Well, then you are not an expert, are you? From what I could tell, the ship was badly damaged. I don't believe it will ever function as an airborne vehicle again. Badly damaged, huh? Well, that I like to hear. Were you impressed by that damage? Catherine paused as all eyes waited silently for her to reply to the sheriff's question. She could tell that it seemed important to everyone else in the room that the sheriff heard things that he liked, and her food was getting cold. Yes, she said. Very impressed. Good. Brilliant. Well done, everyone. Those of ye that have already eaten, go out in the corner and wait for Bip. He's going to continue training ye on axe throwing once he's finished his grub. The noobs just back from the expedition can have some grub too. But be sure and enjoy the training as soon as you're done. Martina, get the place ready for anyone fancying a midnight snack. And try sort out your cooking while you're at it. The smell is foul. I've no idea how anyone can stomach that muck you're churning out. I'm feeling sick just thinking about it. If I wasn't a great leader, it would have sickened me by now. So get it right. How hard can preparing food be? I'm off to have a good chat with the gut and see what he wants doing. Catherine turned to Bip and asked, Can you show me a way back to the surface? I'm looking for my human colleagues. The easiest way for you to find your colleagues would be to join the Army of Darkness. If they're anywhere, they're in Hobla Granicor, or Sosman City, as those Sosniak simpletons like to call it. We're going to take Hobla Granicor by force and wipe Sosman Borkstapel from existence. You're welcome to join in. Catherine thought about the mission. In general terms, it was a success. Humans had touched down on another planet. The San Laika systems had functioned as expected and, as far as she could tell, had not failed in their operation. What remained was to locate her crewmates, determine a means of contacting mission control, and relaying, as best as possible, a full and accurate description of what they had encountered since Mars' orbit. She then remembered the food she had been eating and sat down. I take it you're not joining us. That's a pity, said Bip, who then stepped over and leaned in close. Hey, it's a pity because the noobs here are pretty useless. I could do with a hand. Maybe you could teach them some astronaut stuff. I mean, it mightn't be a big hit with the overthrowing of Sosman Borkstapel, but it'd be an improvement on what they know now, which is very little. Bip stood up and looked around the room. The sheriff had seated himself at an empty table at the far end of the room. He was scratching his elbow and staring blankly at the ceiling. The dozen or so noobs that had been to the planet's surface were quietly eating. Martina was frantically directing 6 noobs in the arrangement of buckets behind the counter, and everyone else was making their way out of the canteen behind him. He leaned back into Catherine. Look, I'm a big shot in the Army of Darkness. I pretty much just single-handedly downed the Sosniak patrol rocket. So if you stick with me, you'll be at the head of the forces that retake Hobla Granicor, which means joining the fight is your best shot at meeting up with your colleagues. And, what else would you like to do? Contact mission control. I'm not sure what that is, but if there's anywhere on Jupiter it can be done, it's Hobla Granicor. Right, said Catherine. Is that, right, Bip? Count me in. I'd love to serve the sheriff in the Army of Darkness. Or, right, some other thing that I don't know about. Right, I'll join you, Bip. After the food. Hey, of course after the food. You can't do much on an empty stomach, or whatever it is you call your interior biological matter energy transfer system. Stomach, said Catherine. Good. We're agreed, so I've a feeling that you're going to get along just fine here, said Bip. And that was it for the supper time in the labyrinth of Chunticle on the 5th night of the first human expedition to another planet. An underground army, of sorts, a late supper, some even later axe-throwing training, a pensive sheriff, European Space Agency mission commander Catherine Bishop, a Martian waitress/astronaut called Martina Ruddlesplitch, 63 noobs, and the last remaining copy of the Book of Bongerlon, adrift on the Sea of Uncertainty on Jupiter. Okay, folks, fair play if you listened to that, and thank you for following. If you have been following the story, there'll be another chapter in 2 weeks' time. Chat to you then.